All right, so I should be live. Welcome to Kubernetes continued live stream. We're going to be talking about the GCP and how we're going to be using Kubernetes to monitor and track namespaces and pod creations. So, as the old video is basically about the introduction part, and now we're going to go into a more detailed view. I will start out with the setup of a low cost GKE cluster. I created a free tier on Google Cloud. So if you enable Google Kubernetes Engine GKE API, these are some of the steps and instructions. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put this instruction on the left, and then we're going to put the dashboard on the right. And what I'm going to see is, if you could just minimize this, I have this free tier from Google Cloud. I know Google Cloud is charged money, but you could create a free account with Google Cloud to give you a $300 free subscription. So if you could go to the settings here, preferences, downloads. So one second. So if I go to the membership plan here, one second. Yeah. So if I go to my first project, so over here you could see that I have a free trial status. Okay. So I have 0 out of $300 credits used and expires on January 10, 2025. What happens when trial ends? You won't be auto charged once your trial ends. However, your resources are marked for deletion and may be lost immediately. Activate your full account anytime during your trial to avoid using your resources, and then avoid losing your resources. After activating your full account, you'll pay only for what you use. So this is really safe. In a backup situation or a scenario, what I did was I actually put a backup card so that even if something cuts, I know that for a fact that it didn't really charge massively on my current cards. So that's one strategy. I would say use a backup card and put that in case, maybe with a very little fund. And even if Google Cloud does cut for some reason, or sometimes you don't even have amounts of money, or not that much, or suppose even not even any kind of funds, and they fail to cut credit within your existing card. So have a backup card in these particular scenarios. But I would recommend that this is completely safe. It's giving you a $300 credit, and you could use it as much as you want. Expires on January 10, which is a very far from right now. And even if the trial ends, it will basically mark all our resources that we create for deletion, and we will be losing those things automatically. And if you ever want to bring them back, then you could just always purchase it. So yeah, this is the Google Cloud Console dashboard, and I'm gonna put it on the right side. And then we have this enable, very simple, practical example that we want to do. I'm just gonna go over to the chats and see if everything is working through. Um, and yeah. So let's start out with a very simple project. We're gonna first of all, um, I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna enable Google Kubernetes Engine GKE API. So I'm gonna go here into the dashboard, and I'm gonna enable GKE Enterprise. So I go to the search, and what I type in is Google, or sorry, yeah. So what I would search in is Kubernetes Engine API. Now, if I search this, you would see that I could see this one. I click on this, and what I would have to do is just enable it. Now you can see it's already enabled. Builds and manages container-based applications powered by the open source Kubernetes technology. API is already enabled, so try this API. You can do manage it. So I'm just going to go back to the next step. Create a minimal GKE cluster. Go to the GCP console, go to the Kubernetes engine. So over here, if you go to the Kubernetes engine right here, and you could go to the clusters, right? Click and create. So choose standard cluster. Do not select autopilot. So by default, what Kubernetes does is you could convert Kubernetes cluster containers package an application so it can easily be deployed to run in its own isolated environment. Containers are run on Kubernetes cluster. So create, and after that, by By default, it would give you this autopilot feature. This is basically more expensive. It gives you more nodes, those virtual machines or physical machines, automated node provisioning, scaling, and maintenance, networking, VPC, native traffic routes for clusters, security shielded GKE nodes, and workload identity. And now we have telemetry, which is basically clouding, logging, and monitoring with cloud operations, logging, and monitoring. We're not going to use autopilot, but we're going to switch to a standard mode. So switch to a standard cluster. After that, we're going to name our cluster. So what we're going to do is configure cost-effective cluster settings. So one second. Yeah, so that was my prompt. And um, the goal here in this stream is we're going to visualize namespace and pod trends within a single GKE cluster on Google Cloud. Yeah, and while staying within our free trial budget. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. And here's a step-by-step guide. That's what we're going to be going through. Well, basically optimized for minimal cost. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go under cluster basics. First of all, I'm going to choose single zone. So you can see over here we have regional, zonal, and regional. We're going to go with US Central 1 or any other. Name the cluster minimal cluster. So I'm going to change this name to minimal-cluster. So you can see right now estimated monthly cost is $383.13. That's basically 52 cents per hour, and I don't want something like that. So you could scroll down and you can see the cost breakdown, but we're going to reduce this significantly. First of all, we're going to choose zonal cluster. When I do zonal, it drops down the price drastically. So I'm going to choose zonal cluster, US Central 1, C, specify default node locations. If I click on this, I mean, it doesn't really do anything. 176 is still like that. But over here we have target release, recommended target version is just like default. But what we want to do is we want to go under node pools. So these are node pools, default pool, and set the node count to 1. So normally nodes are like, instances within a single cluster, right? So the machines, right? We only need one single instance machine. So when I do this, you can see how it went down to $107 and 46 cents. Now, you can add nodes later if needed. Select a machine type with low specs, such as E2 micro. So we want to get the very very low and cost effective machine. So select a machine type with low specs, such as E2 micro, 0.25 virtual CPU, 1 GB RAM, or E2 small. So what I'm going to use is the micro one. I'm going to go down here, and what I'm going to see is that I could find nodes. Yeah, so I'm going to click on nodes, and what we're going to be selecting is the E2 low-cost day-to-day computing with a virtual CPU of 0.25 to 32, and the memory is also within 1 to 128 GB based on availability. So we're going to check over here. Look at this. It's E2 medium, but we're going to go to E2 micro. Okay, we're checking the shared core and E2 micro, 1 GB memory, and virtual CPU, 1 shared core. So look how it went down. It went to $89 now. Okay. Now we have a boot disk size. So you could change this boot disk size, set persistent disk size to 10 GB. If I do 10 GB, it's going down to $80.11. Okay. Now I can't go lower than 10 GB. I tried doing 5 GB last time, but it says at least 10 GB. So I'm putting it as 10. Okay. After that, we have cluster features. Disable any optional features you won't need, like cloud logging or cloud monitoring, since basic monitoring is included at no cost. Okay. So we don't need additional features. Enable nodes on spot VMs, enable nested virtualization. So balance persistent disk size, max disk size is 65,536 GB. So imagine how much gigabytes you could use from Google Cloud. That's amazing. Networking, is just nothing, right? And then we have security. Just keep it as what's default. And then we have metadata, which is also by default. Um, After that, we have cluster automation, networking, security, backup, metadata, and features. We're all pretty much good to go. Fleet registration. You could actually add a fleet. Basically, this is like a group for multiple clusters within a single workspace. So your cluster will be hosted in a project. This to register it to a fleet and another project. Skip this step and use the CLI. So basically, a fleet could be managed by administrators and stuff like that. You could have one fleet, and inside the fleet you have multiple clusters. So yeah, I mean, we could now review costs with the Google free tier. The management fee for a single zonal cluster is free. This minimal setup should fit within the free trial's $300 budget and cost only a few dollars per month. So it does cost $80 for some reason, but I guess this is the most lowest you could go. If you know anything that I could make it lesser, let me know. Oh man, I just added something else, and it just added M1, M2. I use M2. Okay, I just messed up here. I think I didn't have to use memory optimized. So it's just extravagantly creating more memory. And yeah, that's not within our budget. So we're using general purpose E2. $80. Okay? Not memory optimized. If we do memory optimized, that's the build. So general purpose. Any idea from anyone if I could add or remove anything? Okay, I think it seems to be right because I don't see any other options like what it says, like cloud logging and cloud monitoring. I don't see that because that's normally in the automation or networking. Okay, I deselected that. That doesn't do anything. Cloud monitoring, cloud logging. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Security posture, shielder. Okay, enable cloud monitoring. I think I found it. So it's in the features section. Enable logging, collect logs. So it says um, cloud logging. So basically cloud monitoring and cloud monitoring collects logs emitted by your application and GKE infrastructure, see pricing information. So if I click on that, it doesn't do anything. And if I click on enable cloud monitoring, it doesn't do anything. So still it does the same stuff. But it says again, um, it says basic monitoring is included at no cost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep managed service for Prometheus, enable logging, and enable cloud monitoring. And we're just going to keep it like that. We're going to create. So we created a cluster. It's creating our number of node, minimal cluster, and all of this is being created for us. Okay. After that, we're going to access the GKE cluster. So I'm just going to wait until this is fully created. It's provisioned. And then after that, we're going to create the GKE cluster. So, yeah. Any questions or chats, you could leave them here. I'm gonna get a short break until this is fully provisioned. It's gonna take a couple of times, so I'm just gonna wait until this is completely provisioned. But yeah, um, I'm still in the stream, so just let me know. You stop it? No, I was talking about water. Oh, it's the creative cluster is taking some time. It's going to compile? No, it's taking time to make it. You never make rice bowl? No, that's going to cook really quick. Ah. It's going to get cold fast. What do you use? Which masala do you use today? Kadai. This kadai. Show me which national masala. It's another table. Huh? Other place. Other place. We're here? No. Devices. This one? Yeah. Devices. Over here? Wash. Leave it. Yeah, was that clean? No, I made this a kadai. At least we have phone. What? At least we have water. You know these people are dumb. Mama saying pagal hai. Yeah. You know, they're saying that you use one packet for one kg. Mom says pagal hai. Oh. These strong people, they say use one packet for 1 kg. Mom said 8 spoon bhi kafi hota hai. Right. I use 1 spoon. This is the whole packet. That's gonna make it so spicy or something. It's, I don't know. Huh? People do use food like that. I don't know if they're gonna use the food like that. No. Yeah, no, I don't think so because the khalas mein are gonna. Then make it spicy or something. I don't know. If a 1 kg or a 1.5 kg. It's fine. All right, so we're back, and I believe our infrastructure is still being created. Yeah, so this was basically. So in this stream, I essentially just try to provision a simple, minimalistic cluster within our Google Cloud Console, and at the moment, it's gonna take some time, honestly. So once it's like green check marked, the cluster is still being created. So once actually created with one node with 2 virtual CPUs and total GB of 1 memory, after that we're going to move on to the next part, which is to access the GKE cluster. We're going to try to connect to our cluster, and then we're going to install kubectl locally, which is optional. I have it. I'll just show you the process. We're going to enable basic monitoring and Google Cloud Monitoring. And then we're going to uh, create a monitoring dashboard where we're going to activate cloud monitoring. We're going to also create a monitoring dashboard. We're going to add a chart for namespaces, and we're going to add a chart for pods. We're going to also set budget alerts to track costs, and then we're going to go to budgets and alerts, and we're going to create a budget alert. After that, some of the optional cost optimization tips were going to be limit active hours and monitor usage regularly. Use the free trial tier for testing. After that, free 50 virtual CPU hours per month for E2 micro instances in regions like US Central 1. And once we're done with that, I'm gonna tell you how to successfully delete your GKE cluster. All right, so that's pretty much it. And hopefully we'll continue this stream in our later session. Thanks.